everyone. A very pleasant good evening and welcome to the Tobago Heritage Festival 2021. This is number 4 of 5 public education and engagement webinars facilitated by Tobago's own the Tobago Festivals Commissions Limited in partnerships with the Tobago House of Assembly and NGC. This evening's forum is titled The Young People Chat. And it is just as the title suggests, some of Tobago's most distinguished and innovative thinkers and practitioners sit down to share with and engage you on topics from their experiences and knowledge on the Tobago Heritage Festival, as well as their hopes for the future of the festival. This forum is about celebrating our rich, diverse heritage while simultaneously engaging in discourse that points us toward development, generational preservation, and cultural sustainability. If you are now joining us, welcome. We're very, very happy to have you here with us. I am Mrs. Rayshon Pay, a storyteller, a story writer, cultural researcher, the artistic director of the Tobago Performing Arts Company, and today specifically, I am the moderator and host of the Young People Chat. Now, I know the title of the chat says Young People, but I want to let you know whether you are young or young at heart, you are welcome. This is a space for everybody. And because of that, there is something that I would like you to do for us. Only share the link now. Share the live, share it with somebody, tag somebody in the comments, call somebody and let them know that the Young People Chat is on the way and it is the thing to be at this afternoon. So, like I was saying earlier, I am joined by a dynamic panel of young Tobagonians, practitioners, thinkers, business personnel, sons and daughters of the soil. And I want to introduce you to them without any further ado. The first person I would like you to meet is none other than Jamal J. George. Jamal, you smiling already. Jamal, hello, guys. Jamal is a multidisciplinary artist and true Tobago son of the soil. Jamal's first foray into the arts came at the tender age of 8. He's trained in the oral traditions, particularly storytelling. Hence, he goes by the sobriquet, the griot Jali. His enthusiasm for arts and culture then led him to the world of music and dance. You call a festival, Jamal has either participated in it or has passed through it. At this point in time, I want to invite Jamal to say hi to you, Jamal. Can you say hi to all our listeners?
A pleasant good evening to all of Tobago, and I am indeed excited and honored to be here sharing the stage with other great artists and practitioners. And shout out to the Tobago Heritage Festival and to the Festivals Commission Limited.
Thank you so much, Jamal. We're very, very honored and happy to have you here, same way. Our next panelist is no stranger to the screen or to the stage or to the Tobago space in general. He is Shaquille Jones, who I will refer to in the conversation as Kevon. So if I ever say Kevon, you know it's Shaquille that I'm talking about. And he's a creative artist, administrator, and program coordinator that is passionate about the performing arts and champions its development and evolution. He holds a Master's of Arts degree in dance from the Florida State University, a Bachelor's of Science in International Relations from the University of the West Indies. And as an artist, his approach to the dance discipline is multidimensional and it synthesizes Tobago culture and contemporary societal constructs as a way of devising new and innovative performance. Kevon, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much for having me. Let me just say a pleasant good evening to the people of Tobago. Again, it's indeed an honor to be here and to be a part of this panel discussion this evening. Good evening.
Good evening and welcome. We're happy to have you here. Our next panelist, is definitely no stranger because he boasts of having a 30 years of experience. That's actually older than I am. Performing arts at varying levels, from practitioner to educator, policy developer, and consultant. Dance and movement has always been his passion, and over the years, he has made significant imprints and the dance landscape in Tobago, in Trinidad and Tobago, and across the region. He has a dance education. He has done dance education work and has studied dance education at the New York City Hunter College Dance Program way back in 2007. Elvis is a visionary leader and an artist at the core who is passionate about cultural development and economic sustainability. More so, Elvis.
Hi, good evening,
Hi.
everybody. It's a pleasure being here. Good evening to Tobago and to all the viewers. It's certainly a pleasure to be among this distinguished group of panelists, and I'm very excited about this afternoon. I'm very excited to see the kind of conversation and discourse we'll have here. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Elvis. We're very happy to have you here. Our next panelist, do not be surprised if she breaks into song or storytelling or speech time. And she is none other than Olima Gordon-Holder, who has been in performance and culture for over 38 years, serving in several capacities: dancer, actor, teacher, artist facilitator, theater director, and playwright. Mrs. Gordon-Holder has obtained a practitioner's certificate in drama and drama and education from the UWI. She has a BA in theater arts and a minor in carnival studies from the University of the West Indies. Recently concluded a postgraduate diploma in arts and cultural management from the University of the West Indies. She has been an educator under the Ministry of Education for a considerable amount of time and has done her part in imparting knowledge to our young Tobago theater practitioners and theater students. Almal, good evening, Almal. We're very happy to have you with us.
Everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am so honored to be in this panel this evening. It's an honor. Good evening. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to have you here with us. And last but by no means least, another daughter of the soil in the person of Corice Nancis, who is a Tobago enthusiast who considers herself a lifelong student of the island's history and contributions to the nation and the world via its people. Corice is a development strategist with over a decade of local and international experience in communications, marketing, tourism, development, and advocacy. As a cultural ambassador, she has completed research on the genesis of the Congo Ballet and workshop on indigenous Tobago dances at the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts in Jamaica. Corice has also coordinated multiple numerous tourism experiences in the Tobago Heritage Festival for our visitors. So we see that Corice is no stranger to the festival. Corice, we're very happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening to you. Good evening to all of Tobago, whether at home or in the diaspora. It's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this conversation. And I'm just looking forward to what will come to the fore with all the brilliant minds that are seated here this evening.
I totally agree, Corice. You are looking forward. I am looking forward. I'm pretty sure the panelists are looking forward. And our viewing audience is also looking forward. If you're now joining us, welcome, welcome, welcome to the Young People Chat. We are going to jump right into our discussion. But before we do, I just want to give you a sense of how we are going to run things down. So in the first instance, we are going to have presenting. We're going to have presenting Mr. Shaquille Jones, who will be sharing with us on integrating traditional styles and rituals in contemporary performance. He will be followed by Mr. Jamal George, who will speak to us about Caribbean and Tobagonian culture and heritage abroad. And then Jamal will be followed by Mr. Elvis Rajman, who will speak to us about creative entrepreneurship. At the end of the three presentations, I will invite both Corice and Alma Gordon-Holder to weigh in on the discussion. And then we're going to go into the live interaction and engagement. We crave your indulgence. Kevon, Shaquille Jones, I want to invite you to the fore.
All right, so good evening again to Tobago. So this evening, I'm going to be really just delving into integrating traditional styles, rituals in contemporary performances. In my years of performance, I've had the opportunity to be a part of projects locally, regionally, and internationally. I've also had the opportunity to engage in some sort of repackaging of authentic art for a global stage. In my time at Florida State University, my final year thesis was actually based on this broad stroke topic. And in my presentation, remember those before us, it really dealt with looking at the Saraka feast ritual and the authenticity of that ritual and putting it in an unconventional space, the concert dance stage. And in my own process going about developing this piece of work, I had to sit and think to myself, how can I take this thing that is deeply ritualistic, deeply spiritual, and bring it to a place where nobody knows about it, nobody, they have no idea about what it is. And I said I have to have some sort of talk, sit down and talk to the people who teach me this thing. So I had to reach out to people like Karen Berkeley, to Elvis Rajman, who's on this panel. I had to reach out to people like Mr. Wendell Berkeley and have the discussions and try to understand what is the true essence, what is the meaning of Saraka. And of course, I did my own research and, just assessing what I know, the differences and stuff like that. And really thinking to myself, how do I use the tools that I have from my experience, as well as the tools that I learned in my graduate program at FSU to create this performance that could still be and show what it is and what it means, but have it repackaged in such a way that it could be consumed by an audience who has no idea, an audience who has no exposure to this type of movement, to this type of art. And so apart from the consultation, I had to start thinking about what was the essence of the ritual? What am I trying to communicate? And how I could use approaches to choreography to do that. And one of the things I remember doing is thinking of the space first in particular, and thinking about how I could redesign that space to allow for the same type of organic participation, the same type of organic, interest that comes out when we're doing this thing in the Heritage Festival. And what I did, I set up the space in such a way. I had the altar, and I put the seating in a very circular manner. So just playing upon the impulses of the audience at that point from the time they enter the space, and it really sort of guided the way in which they receive this piece of work. With respect to the movement, the singing, the drumming, the chanting, I had to then say to myself, I said, okay, all of this music, all of this movement, it carries meaning, but what can I do to make it look new? What can I do to make it be more innovative and present it in a way that, it doesn't take away from what the authenticity of it is, but it also is able to stand in an unfamiliar space. And I remember going back to a direct individual study that I did with one of my professors called movement phrase analysis. And this is where we were exploring a lot of, deconstruction and reconstruction of movement. And what I mean by that is simply just breaking down movement and building it back up. And, I was able to play around with the authentic movement, the traditional movements from the Igbo and the Manding, and whether it be slowing things down, speeding things up, but it still carried the direct motion, the feeling, the vibe, but it was something new. I looked at using these traditional phrases, but adding a contemporary or a new way of moving as a connective tool to really bring two traditional phrases together, so it creates a level of dynamism. And what that led to was the unearthing of something that I myself was very amazed about. I was able to see the innovation in movement, and I was still able to identify the richness of the folk art in the work, and what that meant or what that looked like in a contemporary space. Also in the piece of work, what I did, I created an opportunity for participation with the audience, interaction with the audience. So there was a part of the movement where they were able to come and be a part of this ritual with me. I chanted with them, danced with them, and that in itself, one of the things about art making, just to divert a little, one of the things about art making is that you play upon the impulses of your audience and the psychology of your audience. And having that participation allowed them to feel like they were truly a part of this thing. So in context of using ritualistic practices or traditional performances in a contemporary space, it's really just about being strategic in the approach as it pertains to movement, as it pertains to set design, as it pertains to music. Because even with the music, yes, I had Miss Karen and they doing the chanting and the drumming, it was recorded live, but I was able to pull things like dubshan and have people chiming in where dubshan is concerned and giving me that vibe that I would usually get once I'm in my natural community or once I'm in the natural space where this ritual occurs. So it's about thinking about the approach and how you could play upon the impulse and the psychology, the psyche of your audience, and bringing this unfamiliar thing and repackaging it in such a way that is digestible, that is welcomed, and at the end, some form of appreciation is really unearthed from the entire process and engagement.
You certainly think and to talk about and to explore. One of the things I am particularly interested in and intrigued by, and I know we will bring it up in the discussion, is the whole essence of space and meaning and immersion, but particularly the creation of something new from something that was. And with that being said, I want to turn things over to Jamal George, who is going to speak to us very briefly about Caribbean and Tobagonian culture being presented abroad, the meaning, the implication of same. Jamal,
Yes.
hi.
Hey.
Hi, the floor is yours.
All right. So the thing about Tobago's culture being represented and presented on the world stage, we have to consider the fact that Tobago is one of two islands that belong to a twin island republic, right? And there's the bigger of the two islands, Trinidad, which has a much more dominant presence and identity on the world stage. But tonight, I really do want to send a clear message to Tobago and Tobagonians that we really, truly have something that is unique, something that is special, and something that you would be surprised. The overwhelming majority of people out here and out there are interested in and intrigued by. I always like to say that whenever it is I walk into a room and I speak, people don't necessarily hear a Trinidadian accent. They don't hear a Jamaican accent. They don't hear a Bajan accent. So they inquire, where are you from? And when I tell that that I'm from Tobago, the smaller of the two islands, right, of the country Trinidad and Tobago, they lean in with interest and intrigue and want to know a whole lot about who we are, what we do, and the very unique culture that we have on the island of Tobago. And so as it relates to the representation and presentation of Tobago's culture on a world stage, it usually comes through the work of Caribbean organizations, right? And so, for example, when I migrated to New York, I became a member of Something Positive, which has the reputation of being the #1 Afro-Caribbean performing company in New York City. And then when I relocated to Maryland, I became an executive at the Cultural Academy for Excellence, which focuses primarily on the steel pan, but they bring in the different kind of arts disciplines. And I say all that to say that these types of organizations are usually the main vehicle for the representation and the presentation of Trinidad and Tobago culture. But when it is that they have an executive or a member like myself that comes from Tobago and that will make it be known that I'm from Tobago, I want to do the things that Tobagonians do culturally, that is the main vehicle or the avenue through which a lot of the sharing of Tobago's culture happens. I know here in the United States, but also on a world stage through those particular organizations. And so with that, I would encourage us to make some stronger ties and relationships and partnerships with these organizations that are really, their mission is to represent Trinidad and Tobago, but in particular, represent our culture and our cultural traditions here in the United States and by extension in the rest of the world.
Jamal, thank you so much. One of the things I found fascinating about what you shared is the idea of managing interest and allowing people who have a vested interest to be able to experience us. That, for me, that is really thought-provoking, for the simple reason why sometimes when we see our culture and we think about it as only having residency in our own space, where it emerged, where it is practiced, where it is prominent and prevalent, but we do not see beyond our shores. We sometimes miss the idea of it having value, and not the gentrified, commodified value, but the authentic representational value outside of our space. And as we're talking about value, we want to shift gears slightly. And I want to invite our next panelist, who will speak about creative entrepreneurship, who will talk about economic sustainability and financial viability through the heritage. For all of us, Mr. Elvis Rajman, welcome.
Thank you, Rayshon. Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be here sharing on creative entrepreneurship. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a creative. This didn't happen by chance. It's something I felt very strongly about. From a very young age, I always liked the idea of making money. So even when in my little village of Pembroke, I was one of those persons who was walking the village with the bananas in a wash pan in my head, selling it throughout the village because I wanted to make money. So, just living in Tobago and being around culture, I always wondered, and I studied in the US and traveled extensively. And I saw so many other countries and so many of my friends and colleagues all over the world making a sustainable living from the arts, from their skills, from their talents. And I said, why can't this happen in Tobago? And something I felt very strongly about, and it's something that it has always been around. The creative entrepreneurship has always been around. It predates, it's gone years and years, but it's only in recent times, over the last decade or so, can we really see that it has really taken on a different light here in Tobago. For the most part, us creatives here on the island, we did things just for the love of it. We just did it because we love it. Every day, every night, we did it just for the love of it. But as time evolved, we saw that, one, there were strong potentials in monetizing it. And of course, there were people who were making money from it. So, for me, I felt, it was something that I need to explore even more. So I, would have honed my talents, honed my craft. I would have actually listened to guidance from individuals around me, who were into business at the time. And I found ways of actually fusing both. And probably I'm one of the few individuals on the island who have actually found ways to really earn a substantial living or revenue from the arts. And what I have seen over time, like through the Festival Commission, how the Festival Commission has fostered and created new entrepreneurs on the island in different aspects of the creative arts sector, not just dancers and singers. I mean, we have created a number of festivals, and coming out of these festivals, we have now stage managers, we have light technicians, we have lighting designers, we have costume designers. So these are all things that really came out from the creatives, but it's really about what I saw and really had a challenge with. Most people were simply just doing it for just the love of it, which is good. But I felt that we could take it a step further and just invest a little more time, a little more strategy, and finding ways how it can become one, sustainable, and two, beneficial to you. So my life journey in the arts has always been one where I've always pushed the envelope. I push the envelope as a performer. I push the envelope as a trainer, and I am now pushing the envelope as a businessman. I own a stage and lighting company that is into events and festivals, and I also do weddings and corporate events. And we sell our services to people far and wide. Most of our clients for under our wedding lines is not local clients, clients from Trinidad, regional, international. So I have seen firsthand the value. Once your product is good, your service is good, I've seen the value and how we can monetize these things. So I think it's a new field, it's a new area here in Tobago, but it's expanding rapidly. I mean, you would have seen a number of individuals, just members here on the panel, Shaquille, Jamal, Rayshawn. These are all individuals who have come through this sector and would have learned and developed, and now they are now applying their trade at the top level as consultants, as directors, as practitioners. So we all have seen how this could really bring benefits to us, but it's really just diving in deeper about taking risk. I think that's one of the biggest things. Someone said to me today, Elvis, you're a person, you've always been a risk taker. But that's the part of business. You have to take the risk. I mean, it's calculated risk. But I hope to see, creative entrepreneurship, something that we develop even more, and not just the things like the dance or the singer or the film, but also in areas in terms of the other support services that support the creative sector. I mean, we've seen a number of these things unearthed in Tobago through the Jazz Festival. Through the Jazz Festival, we have now huge marquee tent suppliers, we have decorators, we have people providing certain kind of delicacies, to our VIP guests and invited guests and patrons in general. And we have seen how these people have been able to make it year after year and expanded their businesses. So it is something that is very new, but it's something that I hope that more people buy into. And I am very happy to be here and share my own experiences as to how this is something that people could certainly try to engage in, certainly try to look into. And, people like myself, and there are many others like myself who would have gone into this area and would have done fairly well. And we are very happy to share the information.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rajman. Your contribution is timely. And because it comes on the heel of a global discourse that is saying the creative and cultural sectors have the potential to outpace traditional sectors once harnessed properly, once the value of the sector is recognized and specific investments and the direction is pointed that way. But also because of the fact that at the base of everything is creativity and innovation. And as we're talking about innovation, I want to invite Mrs. Corys Nancis and Olima Gordon Holder just to weigh in very briefly before we open the discussion, so that I can hear your take before we go into the question and engagement segment. So I'm asking Corys. Question really is about how do we manage not only interest, but how do we manage the value of the festival so that it can sustain itself?
All right, so let me touch on one of the points that came from Shaquille's presentation to drive home my point, right? So he spoke about authenticity. And I think of authenticity, I think of unique selling points, I think of that which sets the island apart. Jamal also spoke about it, identity. or very unique and different identity. Innovation has its place. We are in a time of innovation. The heritage itself has, the festival itself has evolved. It has innovated. In fact, it has shifted from community to commodity. What we have to do is ensure that there is a strong ecosystem that balances training, that balances education, that balances um, all the players, so that not only would the festival be sustainable through the festivals commission and their input, but because we have longevity, because we have that constant involvement of the community. Elvis touched on it, doing things for love and just because we love it, but that's not sustainable. That's not responsible. I mean, even if we look at the term sustainable development, responsible development, sustainable tourism, responsible tourism, those things are anchored in ensuring all areas are covered. They're anchored in socio-economic. They're also anchored in environment. And of course, the host or the destination or the place or country benefiting rather than not benefiting. So for me, I've said a mouthful, but for me, it's about balance and ensuring that all the elements in the ecosystem work together to ensure that there is sustainability. Authenticity is extremely important because that is what sets you apart, and it drives home your uniqueness. It drives home that which makes you stand out. I mean, something as simple as our language. Jamal touched on it. Today, I had an experience. I was in a conversation just before we started this evening's program, and I was basically put on show. My passion is Tobago's dialect. And so I was talking to a cousin who lives in Trinidad, and she was sitting next to someone from Trinidad, and she was like, say something in our dialect. And I did. And he immediately identified it as being Jamaican. And I was like, at all. There are different nuances, but because we don't hold on to those things and we don't ensure the transitions take place, the knowledge transfer takes place, those things remain. Commoditization can make us lose community, can make us lose important elements if the ecosystem is not in place. So I'll leave that there and then, just chime in as the conversation continues.
Thank you so much, Corey. So yes, you've given us a mouthful, but a useful lot. We're talking about managing value. Almal, I would like to give you an opportunity to weigh in on the conversation as well.
Right. Thank you, Rayshon. As Corey sort of mentioned in terms of authenticity, and Shaki would have mentioned about rituals and all of that. I want to take, from the point of view of sustainability in the arts and deal with the educational side of it, because sorry, my educational background as a teacher always drives a lot of my thought processes when coming to culture and sustainability and all of that. And the idea of it for me is sustainability has to start from a very real place in education. It has to start there. And I think sometimes us here on this panel would have grown up in it, not in school necessarily, but in our villages, in our homes, would have been exposed to culture and the different aspects of it in our homes, because our parents would have said, this is something you have to get into, this is something you have to be a part of. And so we grew up in it. But there are so many of our young people, our young people who know nothing about it, who has never been exposed to it. And I think we have to start from a policy standpoint in terms of educating our young people in the schools, because if they don't have access to it at home, then there's a responsibility on us as practitioners, as educators, as people in the arts, to to start advocating for it to go into the schools from a very, very early age, exposing them to it. Because what happens when you realize they reach a certain age and they come to you, who I have been a teacher, and a lot of them don't know it, but they want to be a part of it. And it's very foreign to them from the idea of authenticity or rituals, because sometimes when you try to explain to a child that a ritual is a very particular ceremony consisting of a series of actions, or they'll be like, miss, what is that? That is what obia. And I'm saying that is the philosophy they have in their head from what they would have learned. And so for me, my advocacy comes from understanding that education has to be an integral part to sustainability and 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 moving forward and continue, and being continuous in the in Tobago and the diaspora.
Olimal, thank you so much. I feel like you and Corey's together has given us a bit with which we can pause for a moment to digest. We're talking about sustainability, and I'm thinking about three things. I'm thinking, who is responsible for the sustainability? At this point in time, granted the current climate, why is sustainability important? And if not sustainability, then what? And it takes me back to a point that Kevin made earlier. And so the first question I want to pose to the panel is the whole idea of innovation, because let's be honest, we're at a time where global and international consumption of material, be it traditional, be it cultural, across the board is much more than before, because everybody's tuned into the screen. We're talking about how do we continue to sustain this thing that we've practiced. We're talking about stamping value on it in a manner that can make it sustainable. And we're also talking about somewhere in between there, we may need to innovate on this thing in order to make it sustainable. The question I'm asking is, heritage and innovation, when you put those two things together, I've always had a particular type of innovation, of connotation. And so you hear people saying, but how can you innovate on something that is authentic? The question I'm asking is, how can we approach innovation in a manner that does not imply that we are going to disregard the thing? We're talking about sustainability. We're talking about rendering the next generation conscious of this thing. But how can we do that in a manner that does not disregard the thing itself? Jamal, I want you to jump in first.
I think that that we do have to do. I think that this question can be answered on a macro level, meso level, and micro level, right? And I'm struggling to determine which direction I want to go to right now. I would say that on a macro level, Olmal is right in that the powers that be, the authorities, do need to do some more policy work, right? Particularly within the realm of education, focusing specifically on how do we ensure that when a child leaves schools, that they know the fundamentals of our culture, right? I think that that's one thing that we definitely need to do. And because the generations are newer, once you present our culture in an educational context, I think that the young people are then able to internalize it in such a way and think about, okay, so what are some different things that I can do with what I'm learning about my culture that takes it a step further. And I'm going to give you an example. My first foray into the arts was through storytelling, right? Ibaye, Auntie Pat, Miss Mitchell, who grooms me and trains me in that, right? For today, a couple of years ago, rather, I thought, okay, so we're heading in we are in a technology age. Everyone is in front of the screen, and this is even before the pandemic. What can I do on a micro level to ensure the preservation and the continued presentation of this oral tradition of storytelling? That's an African oral tradition, but we've adapted it in a very Tobago way. And because of my exposure, and because, I'm a young person, I'd like to think, right? And I'm really versed on the technology, I thought of marrying that oral, authentic storytelling tradition and marrying it with the digital to create a digital experience. And so 2 years ago, I had embarked on this project called G for Griot, where I was telling stories about Tobago cultural traditions recorded to the sound of the drums and other percussion instruments, and had it living on a website where children and other people can log onto that website, listen to those stories. But in addition to that, to ensure that the education it stays front and center, in addition to listening to the story recordings, they were also completing different activities like your crossword puzzles and your word search and that kind of stuff that taught them about the language in the stories that they were hearing. So I think that ensuring that our culture is woven into our education curriculum and understanding that the technological advancements are taking place, right? And that we're now more and more moving into a digital space. Naturally, those two will come together, right? And more young people are going to naturally and organically bring those two things together, which in itself is a form of innovation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jamal. You know, I had a similar experience. And I'm jumping off of the point that you made, Jamal, about curriculum integration, that if we present it in an educational context, and I think Alma helped to set this up, then we might be able to reach our children. There is something that happened with me very recently because I asked myself the same question: what role can I play in the preservation of our traditions? And so I started in my own home. And I was showing my daughter some images and asking her just to name the images just to see where she was at, so I know how much investment I needed to make. And I pull out a picture of an auntie because, like you, Jamal, I am a storyteller, so I'm very connected to my African source. I said, "Who's this?" She said, "They Spider-Man." And I, for a moment, I felt so ashamed. I really felt like as a parent, I had not been doing my bit. Wow. And so I went to the YouTube. I was looking at the stories. I had experienced all of it. We were telling stories and we're talking about it more. But somewhere along the line, there were things that were not connecting. And I came out of the tradition. So I feel like when I teach it to her, I present it in the same way that it was presented to me. So just to push the envelope a little bit further, we're talking about innovating for sustainability's sake, but in a way that doesn't disregard or bastardize the culture, the thing itself. Elvis, I'm asking you to weigh in at this point. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think, so I recently tuned into this show. I can't remember this the name of the on Netflix, where these people, they go around to these resorts all over the world, and it's about really showing about the experiences. And I could tell you, and I tie this back to what I said before, the creative entrepreneurship. We have taken weddings and events in the middle of the woods, and people pay money far and wide for those experiences. So the thing that we have grown so accustomed with and have taken for granted, I kid you not, this is what other countries, other destinations all over the world are now zooming into. And show things like our indigenous harvest festivals. Those are huge things that we could really use to kind of really bring a certain kind of attention. Even things like the rituals of roasting the pig under the ground. People come far and wide, Trinidad can't get enough of the roast pig. Sure. But the thing is, we are functioning in a world now where information is key, and how we get information out to our end users, to our target audience is very important. So that's why I see the technology and innovation comes in, because yes, we'd have gone about doing things in a particular kind of way, but with a little twist and a little shift and a little addition here and there, we can make the very same things that we did every day for free. We do every day for fun, and turn it into multi-million-dollar industries. I know this for a fact. I live it, I eat it, and I breathe it. And I want this for more Tobagonians and people within the country, because I'm seeing the rest of the world, they're doing it. The sand and sea is no longer what we could sell. The sand and sea will always be there. Barbados has it, Jamaica, all these islands, they have it. What do we have? We have our resources, we have our experiences, we have our traditions, and it's unique to us. Even though we would have borrowed things, things would have been imparted to us from different countries, from the motherland, Africa, these things, but we made it our own. And it's how we now utilize those things. Jamal is doing it. He was taught right here in Tobago. He started, his roots was right here. Jamal was once one of my students. And he would have learned Shaquille, all of them, they all were once my student. And they would have learned, and he would have harnessed his skills, he would have honed his craft, and he's created a brand that people respect and recognize. And he can easily, if he hasn't started already, monetize it. And if Jamal, you haven't started monetizing it, call me. I have consultancy as well.
Thank you so much, Elvis. Well, I can almost feel your eagerness to jump in. Go ahead.
Right. I was saying that to be innovative, you have to know it. To be innovative with it, you have to know it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes what we forget is that what we have, as Elvis was saying, what we have here is so unique. Like the other day, I was talking to a group of, I was asked by Penelope Spencer to do some storytelling for a group of camp students, and just in Trinidad, and she wanted me to talk about Tobago. And in that one storytelling segment, I spoke about Tobago. I talk about Tobago's people. I talk about Tobago's herbs that used for medicine, and
Right.
what we use to season food, and why the food has tastes so good, and different things. Because a lot of people from other parts of the world say, but there's something in there that make it taste. And we take it for granted. We just go outside and pick up the season from outside and cook with food. And people say, what's the taste? And we explain to them, they still don't know. And I think that is also an untapped kind of market. That herb that we use in our food, that's very unique to us, that makes our taste so unique. And every single village in Tobago, I'm certain, will cook the same pork, and it will taste different in every single village. And that is because the same season that we use would have a different taste according to the kind of soil it come from. If it's close to the sea, if it's close to the rainforest, if it's close to, and that in my view is a very, very unique thing that is very unique to Tobago that we just take for granted. And we had to start finding the ways to capitalize on these things. I'm certain I would have given people some idea right now, but I mean, at the end of the day, we have to start thinking as Tobagonians that we not because is we own, so we go keep it to yourself and not share it, because the idea is no idea is new under the sun. True. And it's good to start sharing, and instead of when people share, saying killing it or try to fight it down, say, you know what, let's see if we could find a way to all of it for different people. I know this person could come in on this and bring in a person, and we start to collaborate on things and start marketing what we know as Tobago in a way that helps all of us and helps with sustainability as well.
But Sean, I want to jump in on Alma's point, because I love where Alma went with this.
Right.
Because, and I don't want to make a plug for TPAC, but shout out to TPAC. but in a real, this is what we should all be about at this point in time. We learned certain things and we felt it needed to be the best hidden secret. That best hidden secret should not be a secret anymore. The world should know it, and we should find ways of how we can monetize it and bring benefits to yourself, your family, your island, and your country. But it's a collaborative effort, because as Alma was alluding to, Rayshawn may really know how to do this. Shaquille knows how to do that. But when you put those two skills together, we get a product, we get something that is unbelievable. But that is something that we have we're not very good at it. It's a sharp learning curve for us. But you know what? This is why we are having the conversation, because there are a number of young people like ourselves who feel that, that way is not the way anymore. We are ridding ourselves from those kind of practices, and we are finding ways to embrace the talents, embrace the creativity, embrace the passion, and embrace the resources, pulling together, making a one, I call it the warap, making the warap and getting something that is usable, something that is beneficial to us. So I think the more we can already adopt that approach, is the more beneficial it will be for the island and for individuals on a whole.
Right.
Yeah.
Just somewhat before, sorry. I just to elaborate further on the point that Elvis would have given earlier, that creative entrepreneurship as well is about investing not
Correct.
only in your own talent, but the talent of other people around you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And finding out a way to make that bigger and better and more and monetize it for people around you, not only yourself, So continue. Sorry. Didn't want
Yeah,
to.
I mean, it's very interesting, the things that are coming up out of this discussion. But I think one thing that we are forgetting in terms of sustainability, yes, it requires you to be innovative to ensure that we could have some sort of sustainability. But we not, I haven't heard just yet the drivers of that sustainability. And for me, is about the youth. And I think one thing that we are challenged with currently is the fact that we are losing our youths in terms of the appreciation for cultural identity or cultural history and all of that. We are competing with mainstream media. We're seeing where young people are allowing the cultures of other places to become so intricately woven into their way of existence and their way of being. Simple again. A young person like myself in Tobago, the normal young person could tell you more about Jamaica than they can tell you about Tobago. So I think in terms of being innovative, we need to see how we could take this back to the people and create opportunities for participation so that they could harness some sort of appreciation for the culture. So the same idea about using the technology and being creative. Again, not to push a plug for TPAC, but again, this is something that we intend to do in terms of taking the material to the people, giving people an opportunity to participate. Because when you participate in something, you have a greater appreciation for that. And then when you have that greater appreciation, you see where that sustainability comes up because it passes on from generation to generation.
But Shaquille, Rayshon, I know we can't give you a break to get in, but I just want to make it last. I'm sorry. I just want to say this.
What moderator? I'm going to log out very, very soon.
In the absence of nothing, anything fills the void.
Thank you.
And that is part of our problem here. And but the thing is, we are not going to get stuck with the problem. We recognize there is a problem. We recognize that it has existed for quite some time. And this is what this process is doing. We are recognizing those things and we are coming up with ideas of how we could climb out. Because as I repeat again, in the absence of nothing, anything fills the void. And that's why you can have all these other cultures creeping in and filling the void because we did not create anything for the young people to follow. And, people like myself, this is why we are pushing as hard as we are to make sure that we could rid ourselves from those things.
Yeah, thank you for that. But Corey, just before you jump in, Kevin, I just kind of want to jump off on a point that you made to add another perspective. When it comes to cultural investment, it is first an individual responsibility before it is anybody else's. Because culture is the kind of thing, it is so dynamic, it moves on its own. And the question that I'm asking, as Elvis is pointing us to us unpacking and understanding the problem, why might ours be inaccessible? Why is it that people might be leaning into others as opposed to leaning into their own? And I think it kind of is couched in a statement that Corey's made earlier that I will go back to. But before I do, Corey, I want to give you the floor so that you can weigh in.
All right. I would have actually preferred that you finished the line of thought that you just had. But Shaquille's point definitely had me thinking about dominant cultures and also the inextricable link to the Tobago experience vis-a-vis Trinidad and where we are in that relationship. It's heavy, but it's real. And sometimes inferiority plays a,
Correct.
or the perception of inferiority
The perception.
plays
Yeah.
plays a very important role in why things are looked at the way they are.
Yes.
Almal touched on it also. Everyone on this panel got involved in the arts, in the art form, individual responsibility, Rayshon
True.
as well. We got
True.
involved pretty young, and our learning did not take place formally.
No.
True.
And it really goes back to policy and
Strategy.
being in, yes, strategy. I was gonna say being intentional about celebrating who we are.
Yes.
Um, I can speak somewhat to the Jamaican experience because I lived there for a number of years. And something that we do not see is how they celebrate their own. And it doesn't just happen. You see, local content, local programming,
Yes,
it
Corey.
plays
Yes.
a very big role, and the state is involved.
Yes.
So let's say, let's look at the Jamaica Festival, which takes place annually, just like our Heritage Festival. The state is vested in a large way, yes, but then you also have corporate involvement in an extremely large way, and so many components. Because another thing that also affects us is the association of anything African or anything dark as being demonic
Right.
and wrong.
Yeah.
And there is that another heavy thing that we need to look at, because our heritage and history also has Christianity in it,
Yeah.
right? What are the things that we are looking at, right? Um, what are the things we are packaging? If we can be more inclusive in what we celebrate, if we can be more dynamic in what we share, and if we can be extremely strategic in celebrating who we are, messages need to be out there. They need to be constant and consistent, right? Not just July, August, right? Not just within the division of tourism, culture, and transportation, or the Tobago Festivals Commission, or the Tobago Performing Arts Company. It has to involve all players because we all have a role, right? So I'll leave it there. Rachel could jump in,
Could
and then I
I?
could jump back to
I
Lady.
see Elvis kind of looking like you want to bust through the screen, and
Yeah, I
Almal
want
hand
to
is up.
jump in.
Almal go. Pardon,
Go ahead.
Elvis. Elvis,
Go ahead.
1 second. Let Almal go, and then you jump in. Go ahead, Almal.
Right. So Corey was touching on some things about content, and I was saying that the other day to somebody that we can't turn on our own local radios and hear local Tobagonian or local artists performing or any other music or the anything, right? Only around heritage time I think because we don't value our own enough, then we're not able to fight enough for the content, because some people don't know it, and then people don't know what the content is. They don't know, so they don't know what they're fighting for in the first place. The next thing is the other way we learned as children was through the games that we played as children. Too many of our children
Yeah.
now, or young people, I mean, I love the idea of technology and all that, but we have lost so many of the valuable lessons we learned as children from the games that we used to play as children. And I think that is something else we need to establish as a proper system in the schools or anywhere. Like for example, like for the Heritage Festival, like how we have the folk fiesta competition, there should be aspects of that competition that isn't judged for prizes, but judge on the authenticity of the way the children interact with each other during play, like have a conversation, how they speak about the issues or things that affect them as children, and sometimes we forget that okay, it's competition, so we are authentic with the dance and the song and whatever. but the things in terms of how we interacted as children with each other, that should be part of the process as well in terms of the competition. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
what I'm not cutting in on what they call village chat for best village or whatever, but something along the lines of because you ever look at how children interact now with the and the anger and the way they're so aggressive and stuff. That's because the avenues we had as children to explore those things was through game. They don't have those games anymore, and that is affecting a lot of how the children view it, how we see it, how that's a big part of
The
it.
absence of human interaction. Communication has really been distorted.
Yep.
Via social media platforms and digital media,
Because
like
everybody like this, everybody like
yes,
this.
It has been reduced to a swipe and a
yes,
click. Totally
that's
agreed.
correct.
Totally agree. Elvis, I know you wanted to jump in. Excuse me.
No, well, my view is very controversial.
Go with
Actually,
it.
it's a hell of a controversial view.
Go with it,
I'll
Elvis.
put
Jump
it out
in.
there. So I celebrate tradition. That's where I came from. But I remember having some, Kevin and I had a conversation the other day. I wouldn't call the name. you know, because I studied dance and I studied the art of movement, the way we move, the way Kevon Shaquille is moving now would have been very different to how Nine, Mr. Cape, Marceline, these people would have moved because of one, how we socialize now. So therefore, movement evolved over time. And so has intelligence evolved over time. So yes, I could relate to me running through the bushes and playing and burning up the energy and going on the mango tree. And that would have brought us some kind of, I was healthy. But when I look at my son is now in this world where everything is like this, but he has a total different kind of intelligence. And, so it's really about that balancing act. I see it really as that balancing act.
Of course.
And I want to kind of really go back to a point that I think was Alman or Shaquille made, Coris made before. What has helped us to move forward is education. Education allowed us to own our blackness because that inferiority thing was there for a long time. You know that. Everybody here, we know you go down to that best village is what? We come in. because we felt once we hit that boat, and we got on in Sintal and the 3 hours or the 4 hours sitting on one mattress in a room.
Right.
We don't care. Because
accommodation.
Yes, to sit, we want to go on the stage. But what has allowed us to get past, that's why I'm very proud of this group that I'm here with, because we all came through that. And what allowed us to rise beyond this and allow us to add value to the conversation is education, because education allowed us to own our blackness. We now could walk into any room, any part of the world, whether it be Trinidad, Jamaica, any part of our racial, could own our own. Jamal could own his own. And that came from education. It allowed us to feel more confident. And it allowed us to innovate because we learned tools that added value to what we always felt passionate about. And I think that is what is needed more than ever. Because one of the things I think I've always had a problem, when I came back in 2007, I said, what is the upward mobility plan for somebody in the arts? There was none.
Right.
There was absolutely none. We made it up as we go. This is the first time. It is 2021.
Thank you.
It is 2021 that we finally decided to do something that is strategic,
right,
that has a game plan, and we're rolling it out. And I'm very proud to be a part of this with the entire team. But this is the approach where you say, it's better to be late than never. And, it's here now. And I'm happy that this kind of discourse is happening to allow us to grow, build, and add value.
Elvis, I wanted to jump in because as you spoke, being, the advocate of controversy about, evolution.
Yes.
I'm going back to that word authenticity.
Right.
Authenticity ultimately has the potential to legitimize or delegitimize whatever is it, the product, whatever it is. In this context, it's Tobago Heritage Festival, right? So we're talking about celebrating what was. When you spoke about being controversial, my mind went to documentation,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
change takes place, evolution,
Constant. Constant.
it's constant. It has to happen.
Like culture.
But
Yes.
thank you. But if we don't document, that is where the problem comes
Yes.
in, because
Right.
then there's
Yeah.
no evidence,
Right.
right?
Correct.
How are we being custodians of the journey? How are we being custodians of the experience? Um, Two videos come to mind that I see floating in the YouTube space. One is of the Tobago Heritage Festival being marketed in New York with a live group, and one is of the Heritage Festival in maybe 1991, like in the real early years.
Yeah, them in the
I
days.
mean, it has some elements that I'm sure animal they will cry animal abuse and all kind of things, right? But it was so authentic, so real, so raw. And what I appreciated about that part of the journey was the focus on exchange and education. Like they were really um, committed to that aspect of it. Um, we've kind of lost the mooring where that is concerned. As I said, moving from community to commodity. But as we've continued talking, balance is something that we is a consensus in the room.
Yeah.
Education is a consensus in our virtual room here. Um,
Experience as well.
yeah, experience, of course, is a consensus. So I want to throw that out there. Documentation is important, because if we document, then we won't lose authenticity, we won't lose history, we won't lose what is, what was, for what is and what will be. I remember on my first trip to China, they took us to the Great Wall and the Forbidden City in Beijing. And the Great Wall still look like the Great Wall of the Great Wall days.
Yeah.
Right.
The Forbidden City still looks like the Forbidden City when it was the Forbidden City. I mean, the throne rooms have cobweb, whether it is real cobweb or fake cobweb, I don't know. But it's the experience. And then the incorporation of the information and technology. So there is place for innovation and for evolution, but documentation is of paramount importance, because there is value in what was. Shifts, there will be shifts in value, there will be shifts in perspective, but there is definite value and agency in what was, and we need to protect and preserve that as the
Very
journey continues. That's what
Can I?
came to mind as you
So,
spoke here.
can
Yeah.
I? Can I
Yes,
say
Jamal, go
something
ahead.
quickly to dovetail off of something that Koish just said? And I have to 100% agree, right? As everyone was speaking, I was thinking about this idea of sustainability and Almal saying that, but we have to know the origins and whatever the authentic product is. And record keeping came to mind. And I don't think that Tobago has done a great job with the record keeping that would allow for the sustainability, allow for the strategic thinking, allow for the innovation to happen down the road, right? But starting from the point of origin. And I think that that it seems as though we're moving in the right direction with the establishment of TPAC. I don't work for TPAC, I just, but we're
It is
heading
so,
in the right
Jamal,
direction.
it is so inevitable. It seems so inevitable. You go ahead.
We're heading in the right direction with institutions or organizations like TPAC, not just necessarily in the establishment of them, but in the personnel that we give the reins to really take this further. I think for a very long time that the custodians, someone used that word earlier, or the guardians of our culture have been those that have been older, right? And that the opportunity had not been provided for the younger folks who do know, but also have the experience outside of Tobago that can inform their innovation. Those opportunities have not always existed. And it's time now that we start handing over the leadership of our culture and our cultural products to people who are visionaries, right? I don't think that anything Elvis just said was controversial. I was awaiting the controversial piece of it. But rather, it is a man who has a vision and who is now in a position to really realize that vision, not to his own benefit, but to the benefit of our culture, right? Particularly our performing arts.
Yeah.
So I think more and more of that needs to happen. We need, as Tobagonians, to really lean into this mindset shift that is required to take us a step further. For far too long, we have felt and thought that culture is going to take care of itself. And look at where we are as a result. So we really need to do that mindset shift that takes us out of that mindset that says culture is going to take care of itself, it's not valuable, it's not as important, so on and so forth, into a mindset that says this is ours, we need to be proud of it, we need to shout it or scream it from the mountaintop every opportunity we get, we need to learn about it, we need to find innovation, an innovative approach to its preservation, but also to its representation and presentation, not only to our local audience, but to a national, regional, and international audience.
But also, can I just also add, but we also have to situate it in a place where we stop seeing the normal faces talking about it or selling it to the world. We have to put it situated in a place where not the people on this panel, the people who we are accustomed seeing, but the other people around us who has learned from it, who has documented different aspects of it and telling different parts of it. Because there's not heritage only in Tobago Heritage Festival. There's other parts of Tobago that we could start documenting and start making stories about, or telling the story of and putting it out there. And it doesn't have to always come from us or from TPAC or, you know, what I mean? I'm just saying we could implement a place where we could change the faces a little bit and start putting it out there for everybody to be a part of the process.
Yes, Amal, I totally agree. I think what you're pointing to is perception as well as points of access. And so it bears the question, what is the reason why you're only seeing a few sets of faces advancing the discourse and taking up the mantle and recognizing the responsibility? Because in every culture, there is a natural handing over process. And that handover from being a knowledge bearer to the practitioner who then becomes the knowledge bearer has to happen in every culture. One of the misconceptions, I believe that one of the things that I think one of the mistakes we've been making, and I'm boldly saying mistake, is that sometimes we take for granted that there's a difference between heritage and culture. They're not the same thing. They are not the same thing. And so culture is like a bad child who you tell sit down and he go still do what he wants and he go still get up and he go still go outside and he go still back down thing. But heritage, on the other hand, speaks to that fixed inheritance. And like you said, Almal, while the issue is that you see the same faces all the time, you see the same people advancing the argument and taking it on as their own agency. The question that we're asking now is, what is the reason why you're only seeing a few sets of faces? Jamal, you said something earlier. When you pointed to the fact that Elvis's statement was not controversial, one of the things that I have recognized, and I'm going back to a point that Corey's made earlier, is that idea of community to commodity is still a scary notion for a lot of people, particularly when it comes to heritage, and we're talking about the fixed inheritance, that thing that we've been given as is in its original authentic state that we present time and time again, year after year. And so where the discourse is going is that now more than ever, those things we recognize can find residencies in the global markets, can infiltrate bigger spaces. Yes, Elvis?
I want to jump in.
Sure, go ahead.
I will call a name, and no disrespect meant. As somebody that she has, imparted a lot of knowledge on me, and I have great respect for her, Cynthia Alfred. When I came back here in 2007, I remember, I was very big on, how do we fuse contemporary dance with traditional forms of movement. That has been my quest. I studied it extensively at university. And I came back here and I started working with the belly form. And when Cynthia Alfred saw the belly, it blew their mind. She said, Elvis, what are you all doing with the folk? It was a big scene. Because they saw the rehearsals, like, no, you cannot do that to the art form. You're disrespecting the art form. It's da 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 da. And it went on, and we put it on stage. But it wasn't what validated it. It wasn't what these individuals would have said. It's how the people responded to it. And as a result of how the people responded to that, through Urban Ritual Dance Company, Shaquille, you were there. Corrice, you were around. Alman, you were around. Kobe created work there. We created a platform because we saw the need that people wanted to explore different ways of the art form.
Of
And
expression.
we created that platform for people to kind of really express themselves in that kind of way. So I think we have a situation where we kind of locked into things should not change. And
I agree.
I
agree on this.
totally disagree that we are accustomed doing heritage with flats and a 10 by 10 tent looking dirty on the ground.
Oh,
That
God,
that is what we know. But we have
The world has moved.
evolved from that,
Yes.
and we are doing things now, the very same art form, the very same culture, we're doing it now and presented it in a way that is palatable anywhere in the world.
True.
And this came when we started to embrace newness, when we started to embrace technology, when we started to embrace those things. I think that is certainly the direction that we ought to go. And I want to just go back to one thing that Corey said, because China, Melanie said that, I like Chinese people more than I probably like my people, but I love the Chinese people. They are my friends. I've gone there twice. But what I saw when I went to China found a ways of how they, through their institutions, to really capture their history. Listen to me. When you go to China, you will see what the city is going to look like 50 years from now, guaranteed. You're seeing what it is now, and you're seeing how it's going to move 50 years from now. And you see the areas where the city is this way, and you see where it came from, because you could still go into those thatch houses and experience the full indigenous. And they money. When we go to those places, you had to pay. I mean, Chinese people paid for us, but you had to pay. So therefore, it's about us kind of really just being open. I think open is the first thing we need to be open.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead, Corey.
And this is where I am a strong advocate for the documentation.
Yes.
You see, if it's documented, you will not feel as though you will lose it.
Something.
You have a point of reference. Absolutely.
You have your point of reference. At this point in time, I believe by 2021, I should have been able to go onto a Tobago Heritage website and find a digital library with every opening night from 1987 to now. Okay,
I love
not
that.
absolutely. It may not be possible because of how documentation may have worked
been
then.
happening and
But
where the
even
archives have gone.
dances, the belly, the jig, the reel, the Congo belly, like even the Congo belly, my experience with the Congo belly was so mind-blowing. Learning one thing and then sitting at the foot of the man who created the dance to realize what I was doing was not what he created, right? No, I saw this year a video with one of his nieces teaching the Congo belly, and my heart was filled because documentation is taking place. Even the first webinar, which highlighted Mr. Beard, because for so long the conversation somewhat excluded Mr. Beard.
Yes.
And so it's very important to document. You see, once we document and we do it well, we archive. I should be walking into the Shopper complex, into the Heritage Library, because it's an actual Heritage Library.
Corey's, I need that in. When reach you and pass you. When reach you in pass you. If it has not happened then, I guarantee you, whether it happens under one organization or the other, we will not allow this to continue.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we will
I
not
have,
allow this to continue. And that is all I would have to say that where it's concerned. So let it fall where we need to fall. If they don't do it, I guarantee you, we
It
will.
will be done.
Yes.
I also want to add as well that, I mean, it might be a little controversial,
No, come on now.
but
Nothing is
yeah, the
controversial.
thing is, because we've all been in the space, we've created in the space, and we've done different things in the space. We have been innovative. We've infused different things and stuff. What has happened that has kind of created a kind of divide is the fact of when you create. Remember, this is also you trying to figure out yourself in the space as well. The people that has the voices that other people would listen to, that you influence. When you go into a public space or a public forum and you totally destroy somebody's work because you feel as if it's not aligned with your particular view, then what happens is people don't see the things that they're supposed to see within the work that was created. What they hear is the people who has the voices to explain or to make a better understanding to the audience. They hear them killing it or destroying it, and so you don't get to see exactly what the person was trying to say in the work, or what they try to put out there.
And that's the point. Oh,
So,
sorry, I'm interrupting.
no,
And that
So
and
let's
I think we have to understand as the guardians or whatever, we have a responsibility
yeah.
to defend, to educate, to put out there the thing that we want people to go away thinking that, you know what, even though it wasn't of the best, the lesson in this or the thing that we walk away with is something that that is profoundly ours, that we need to hone and make better for the next time or whatever. I don't know. But I think that's a huge part of why so much of it gets lost in translation, or
Yeah.
because the people, us, we do the justice that we need to do in terms of defending the work for everybody, for each of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hope I was clear in what I mean.
Yeah, clear. And I mean, if I could jump in here just a bit, Clarice, she stressed on documentation, stressing on documentation. But, as a young person involved in this thing, and, Rishon made a very pertinent point to it in terms of the naturalness of culture and the standard bearers passing on to practitioners who then become standard bearers. One of the challenges, especially presently with documentation, is the access to that information, to the people who have the information.
right.
One of the challenges of documentation is the access to the information from the
Preach.
people who have the information.
Exactly.
And now, while I understand that, the way Tobagonians, the way we receive information, or the way we get things is through participation and experience, we're at a point, we're talking about innovation and being able to write and secure, and that no longer can be the only way. It is part of it, but it can't be the only way. So how then do we make use of the people who have the information? How then we engage with them to have and get this information so that we could document, so that we could have that point of reference we're all talking about? We lose.
So,
I think part of
Jamal, just let him finish and then
yeah,
let
sorry.
Jamal
I
jump
was
in and then we
I
come back.
agree with
We
him
come back to
actually.
you.
I
I
agree
think
with him.
Okay.
I think part of the reason why they say we have lost our way is because we don't have that point of reference, and we don't have that point of reference because the people who have the information, before they are willing to give it off, not all are not willing, but before they are more willing to give the information, there's a reluctance, there's a barrier, a wall.
It's in the hand
I am
like this.
agreeing.
It's in
Listen,
the hand like this.
Exactly. So
can
then
I?
the question then lies, how do we document? Who do we talk to find this information? I mean, research is a broad term, but in context of the Tobago space and Tobago's culture, how do we access that information so that we could start the documentation?
Exactly. As well, as a teacher, theater arts teacher, one of the things my students have to do is go and interview somebody in the community who has contributed to the culture in their community. And sometimes when you send students out there to meet certain people, some people blatantly says no, either you pay for the information or you don't get information at all. And that has been happening. I am telling you, and I'm saying the child will call and say, Miss, the person said I don't pay them a certain amount of money for this information. And I'm saying we are still encountering these kind of things out there. So that is also a part of the argument, Kevon.
So a couple of things I do want to say, right? One of which is in direct response to what Almal and Kevon just raised as one of the challenges that we experience in the record keeping and the documentation of these or culture of our culture, right? For the purpose of the preservation of our heritage. I think that thinking about a solution, this is where, and Elvis alluded to this earlier, a strategic approach needs to be taken. Not just a strategic one, but a collaborative one, right? With key players, whether it be in the public and the private sector together or just the public sector. If it is that we know that the gatekeepers, so to speak, of this kind of information require certain incentives in order to provide it, then we need to go the route of, okay, so how, let's identify who it is we need to speak to. Let's identify what it is going to require for them to impart this information onto us and do it in a formal way. I would say that one of the things that we have to get better at is doing things in a very formal and professional way, right? If it is that we want to access this information and we know that the information has to come from this person, this place, that place, then in our strategy, we have to account for that and we have to do whatever it requires to ensure that that happens. So when it happens, we then don't need to go back to the same source of information in the years to come,
right?
Unless that's what they want, right? Unless they've made themselves available so that you can do that. But again, it comes with a strategic and collaborative approach in the strategy in which you identify the who, the what, the where, the why,
the how,
and the when, and particularly the how. So that's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing that I do want to say is, I go back to my point about those who have been the gatekeepers for eons and eons and eons, right? We are at a stage now, and I hope that with TPAC and other organizations, stakeholders, thank you, being established, especially with these younger, fresh minds who, and I venture to say that those that are on this call are privileged to have been to have been part of the old or entrenched, rooted deep down in the old way, but then also had one foot, and I'm moving my legs and I'm doing this, had one foot in the future, right? Had one foot in the new way. So we are really positioned to bring the two together in a way that we can take this thing, we can enhance it and take it even further, but it's going to require providing folks like us with the opportunities to do that kind of work that is required to enhance, to elevate, and to take further.
I just want to quickly say, as it relates to that strategic place and that strategic approach to those who have a strong sense of ownership of information. Remember, some persons also operate from a place of feeling, being traumatized and feeling slighted for things that this generation may not have done, but that ownership is their place of quote unquote guarding. Almal, you spoke about your work, not your work, but work, person's work, and work being an extension of the human self. And just imagine how you feel if your work or your contribution has not been respected or celebrated or recognized. And then persons just come in to take.
Yeah.
It's from that place. So we definitely have to be strategic. We have to find the solution because we need to guard, we need to document, we need to archive, we need to preserve, we need to put in place because as we've said, culture will continue to evolve,
Yeah.
and the evolution, if we're not careful, we can certainly lose. I don't think it's too late.
Me
There,
too.
Jamal said it best. We are a bridge of the old and the new, the now, moving to the future. And there are
Yeah.
still sufficient walking encyclopedias around who have the information, who,
Yes.
I mean, persons who've been there at the beginning of this thing, they're still alive.
Yeah.
So it's not
Mm,
too late for us to
yes,
do
for
what we
real.
have to do to tap into the $1 billion orange economy that exists
In
globally.
Tobago.
There is a specific quote by Martin Carter that says, "The more we are men of our time, the more men we are." And at every turn, it's important to recognize that the time will shift, whether or not we like it. The time that we're in now and the conversations that we're having now will look differently 20, 30 years ago. And we have to be men of our time at every point. Points of access has changed, perspectives are changing, the way we do things are changing, and we have a responsibility in efforts to render the next generation, the coming generation, capable of moving the thing forward. We have to equip them and prepare them in a manner that they can become men and women of their time. At this point in time, we want to begin our wrap up, and to do so, I am asking all our panelists to leave us with a brief action statement, action phrase. We're talking about the young people chat. I want to thank everybody for coming and for joining us. You're going to hear from the panelists for one final time. And I'm asking you to share some action phrase. How can we move forward? What is the next step that must be taken? Because we recognize that cultural and heritage preservation is partly all of our responsibility. I want to begin with who we started with, Shaquille.
The time, again, thank you so much for having us. Thanks to the Tobago Festivals Commission. What I want to say to the young people is that the time is now.
Yes.
Time to get involved, the time to get on board, and time to take this thing forward.
Thank you so much, Shaquille. Jamal.
All right. So, what I would like to say is that in my 9 to 5, I'm a school administrator, particularly responsible for building positive school culture. And one of the things that we do is really ensure that folks are aware of the core values of the institution. And so, I want to posit that our core values that we want to keep in mind around the preservation of our culture and heritage should be respect, as in respect the culture, responsibility, as in take accountability and do your part in ensuring its preservation. Community, make sure that we use community within the culture to ensure that it continues to spread to generations and generations. And lastly, dignity. We have to take pride in what is ours. And with that, thank you, Tobago. Love seeing you.
Thank you so much, Jamal. Elvis.
So I'll be very brief. I share this wherever I can and whenever I can. And I always say 3 times: inclusivity, inclusivity, inclusivity. Let's dream, let's create, let's inspire.
Thank you so much, Elvis. Corey's.
All right. Thank you so much for a wonderful discussion to all my colleagues on this panel and to the viewing and listening audience, regardless of where you are. My encouragement to you is as values and perspectives shift and evolve with time, as the Tobago Heritage Festival continues to move from community to commodity, I ask all of us to honor our heritage, honor our culture by taking personal responsibility and celebrating who we are and who we can be by doing our very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey's. And last but by no means least, Mrs. Alma Gordon Holder.
I just want us to be reminded that an investment in our talent makes us a creative entrepreneur, but also Be your authentic creative self in all that you do, in all your undertakings, and that will take you places. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all my ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, members of the community, Tobagonians, Trinidadians. If you're tuning in from any island in the region or around the rest of the world, you've heard it. This has been the Young People Chat, facilitated by the Tobago Festivals Commissions Limited in partnership with the Tobago House of Assembly and NGC. I would like to take this time to firstly thank the panelists, the brilliant and wonderful panelists who have presented: Elvis Rajman, Corice Nancis, Jamal George, Kevin Jones, Alma Gordon Holt. I would like to thank you for your time, your knowledge, and your expertise. I would like to thank the Tobago Festival Commissions Limited Board of Directors, the technical team, as well as our sponsors who I listed earlier up, who I will list again because we are so grateful for your support and your partnership. NGC, the Tobago House of Assembly. Thank you for tuning in to the Tobago Festivals Network. This has been the Young People Chat, and I am your host, Ray Sean Pierce, signing off.